All right, so yeah, this is the Uncivilized Art podcast. I am Birmingham Hazan, but I go by Bandit Haze in the online space. And today, joined by oh, sorry, I'm not crack my L's in front of the microphone. I'm joined by Celeste Orchid. We're going to be talking about Wednesday, the Netflix TV show that premiered, I think, a few months ago. We're going to be talking about that, give a little review, give a little discussion, that kind of thing. Before we get into that, though, real quick, Celeste, how you been? What you been up to?
Oh my goodness. First and foremost, thanks for having me on again. And secondly, I've been a lot of baby and thrift store shopping. It's been a thing, and it's like stores here are really crazy. I can find so many nice deals for under like £10 and such like that. I don't know the conversion rates, but it's pretty dang good over here. And then of course my son's growing up, he's starting to crawl, and that's been such a journey of like, oh my god, why are you not on there over here now?
Yeah,
It's pretty amazing to see a little human come out of me, and then now he's crawling,
he's not a year yet,
talking
is
and
it?
stuff.
It's still less than a year, right?
Yeah, he's half a year old now.
Half
As
six, about six.
of,
Okay, yeah.
well, the February 19th, he's half a
Okay,
year.
all right. So he's starting to crawl. Yeah, is he trying to push himself up, or is he still far away from that?
Oh no, he can plank. He can like legit like on his hands full push up kind of plank, and then he can't move that way, so he army crawls kind of, or
All
he
right, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
slap crawls like the ring.
Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah,
All right,
but
so
no knees yet.
okay, well, soon. Yeah, so we're going to be talking
Exactly.
about Wednesday TV show. We are going to be getting into some spoilers and tell you what we think and talk about some of the themes and things like that came up. Before we get into all that, though, let's just start with kind of a basic opinion of the show. Like, what did you think of the overall show of Wednesday?
So like when I originally saw the trailer, I was like, this might be good or this might be really bad. But knowing that it was directed by Tim Burton and it was his vision, I was very curious as to see where this was going to go, because generally I like Tim Burton movies.
Mm,
And knowing that this was a series, I'm like, oh, this is definitely going to either go well or go really bad, and Netflix is going to be like, no more for you. But I think he jumped ship kind of from Disney. So when I saw the cast, I was like, I don't know if I like this cast. Like when they had the casting of what's his name? What's his name? Luis Guzman as
oh, right, yeah.
uh, Gomez. I was
Go,
kind
yeah.
of like, and then they were explain. A lot of people are like, oh, it's like the comics, and it's not the Gomez. And I'm like,
Mm,
you know what? It doesn't matter because the show's not the Addams Family. It's
yeah,
about Wednesday. So, like, he's a supporting character, so I didn't
yeah.
mind. But when they cast Catherine Zeta-Jones, I was like, oh, let's go. I'm excited. Let's see it. I'm ready for it. And I was like pretty excited. I didn't like how they really changed up Wednesday's look to have bangs, but I think it's a nice transition from like girlhood to like adolescenthood. So I watched like a little bit of that, but overall, I was pretty intrigued to see what they could do, focusing on one character as opposed to the whole family, so they weren't fighting for the spotlight.
Mm. So,
What about you?
but are you quite familiar with the Addams Family, like the TV shows and the movies and things like that?
Only the 90s movies and then the more recent animated movies.
Okay.
And then a lot of like the cameo appearances, like on Scooby Doo, that they had. I didn't watch the old school ones in black and white. I didn't watch that. I didn't watch the show afterwards. They had the new Adams Family on
Oh, right.
ABC Family,
Was
I
it that
believe, with
animated one, wasn't it?
like they went more campy with it, and I was just like, I don't know. If you are not Angelica Houston and Raul Julia, I don't want it. Keeping that bloodline pure.
Yeah. So I kind of
That sounds really mean.
yeah. So I kind of cut you off a little bit. My bad. I'm sorry, but yeah, you was asking me what I thought of it, but sorry. But yeah, no, I liked it. I liked it. I guess I'm not super familiar with the Adams Family in general. I remember I used to watch the old school Adams Family when I was a kid, because you used to show the repeats of it on TV. So I remember watching that old school black and white Adams Family a little bit when I was a kid. I don't think I ever watched those '90s movies, but I do remember the MC Hammer song that was popular at the time. Um, and yeah, I never really watched any of the cartoons and that sort of thing. So yeah, I guess I know a little bit about Addams Family, but not super familiar with it. But yeah, going into this, like you said, it's based on one character, not the whole family, so it is taking a complete different approach. But overall, I thought the show was good. It was well made from beginning to end. It showed a pretty consistent story. I think they did something that most, well, not even most, but certainly a lot of modern shows don't quite hit, which is like 8 to 10 episode story arc. Because in the olden days of TV where you had like 20 plus episodes, you could just like take your time with it, right? But more lately, shows have been sort of 8 to 10 episodes because there's just a lot more choice now and that sort of thing. And you find that a
Well,
lot of shows. Sorry.
like it cuts out a lot of B-roll, like how TV shows have a lot of that filler. So it's like you have to get the
Yeah.
lines right, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So it cuts it all down. So it's a bit more kind of like boom, 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 boom. And but I do find that a lot of shows do, even with that, a lot of shows now still feel like they're kind of skipping ahead at times because they don't really have the time to kind of flesh things out. Whereas this show, it felt like they paced it quite well over the 8 episodes. Yeah, 8 episodes. So like it didn't feel like they was taking too long at any time or they were moving too quick at any time. It did feel like a nice pace. So yeah, I enjoyed it from beginning to end. I thought it did really well as my basic non-spoiler
I didn't really
review
think
for
about
now.
that, but you know what? You got a valid point because I guess it was 8 episodes, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Because it wasn't 10.
let me just double check that real
And
quick. But
like
yeah,
they had a really great story. They even had a lot of subplots in it too.
yes.
Oh, let me see. Like,
Um,
yeah, they had a lot of subplots, and I was just like, yeah. Do we need the subplot? Does it do a thing? Does it expose a little bit of the backstory that we are looking into? And it's like, oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, okay, we like it. Oh, apparently, I'm just gonna go black.
yeah, 8 episodes. Just double check. Yeah, it's 8 episodes. Cool. Okay. So it looks
Hello.
like Celeste is doing her Wednesday impression, like literally, right now.
Apparently, that's just what it wanted to do. I'm sorry. Anyway,
Cool.
can't help technology these days.
Indeed, technology is great until it isn't. Right. This is kind of how that goes. Um, all right.
Absolutely.
So let's get into a few more details of the show. Then, what would you say stood out to you the most of about the show? Like, what would you say like its defining sort of moments or theme or something? Something that just stood out to you.
So I thought it was really interesting how they did give Wednesday a somewhat love interest because we
Mm,
grew up having her be like 8 to 12 max. And now here she is like potentially 15, 16, 17 age, right? Like the teenage.
yeah.
And it's just like, oh, now she's like juggling with not wanting to be interested in guys. And now suddenly the hormones are starting to kick in. And then it's like, oh, yeah, she's totally into this guy. And this guy's like totally hollering at her. And then this other chick is all like, you suck. And she's like, oh, yeah, I'll be better than you. And I'm not hitting on your guy, but he likes me. And
Mm,
maybe this sort of thing happened. It was just really interesting to see how they worked kind of this interesting love thing into Wednesday's
mm,
storyline. That really stood out because it's not like I imagine her ever really wanting to get with someone, even though they pushed it in the 90s movies with Christina Ricci as Wednesday. And it's just like, oh, okay. I mean, you're kind of young, you're like 13 maybe. Like maybe, you want to experiment, but that's not really a Wednesday thing. And then
mm,
there's kind of like, well, you can't fight hormones. After all, that's where Morticia and Gomez met, was in at the college. No, school. Yeah. It's not college. But I thought that was interesting. And then how they actually incorporated like, oh, now it's a mystery and you don't know
mm,
what's going to happen. And I'm like, that's kind of what interesting because I didn't know where they were going to take this. Like,
mm. Yeah, the love angle. Yeah, I definitely thought it was quite interesting because they kind of portray Wednesday's character as this very kind of, sort of devoid of emotion type person. Like she's supposed to be like this kind of logical, rational thinker and doesn't have time for all these petty emotions. I think they use a lot of emotions make you weak or something along those lines. And she even says to Morticia at one time that she doesn't want to fall in love and get married and that whole thing. So they kind of portray her as that type of person. But then, like you said, of course, you can't help hormones. And I think it kind of shows, at least to me, like as much as people sometimes try to be, logical and rational and that kind of thing. Ultimately, we are emotional creatures when it comes down to it, and we all feel things, even though we don't always want to admit that we feel things. So yeah, that's kind of what I got from that. I thought it was quite interesting how they played it out. And of course, by the time she kisses that dude and like,
Oh my gosh, right? Okay,
Tyler.
I have to say one thing. Sometimes with like CGI, it looks great, but when it came to like the somewhat villain, I'm not saying spoilers. It
I'm
kind
not
of
even going to
looked
spoilers. We can't
kind of.
spoilers.
I did. Okay, well, spoiler time. Like when you actually saw the Hyde in his Hyde form, it was kind of like, dude, this is like a really not that great CGI. Like, dude, you're
Mm,
Tim Burton. You could have had a little bit more money towards this, considering like they had a lot of other parts that had CGI that was like really great. And then it came to this guy. And I'm just like, why does it look so weird? Like, is this PS3 era or something? What the
mm.
heck? I'm
Yeah,
not saying that I need everything very nice. I'm just saying that thing sticks out like a sore thumb to me.
no, for sure it
And,
did.
you
It
know,
kind of
Tim
looked a
Burton
bit
has this really
cartoonish.
peculiar style. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And it's like, okay, if we were going cartoonish, like everyone else needs to follow that suit. But a lot of it felt very like very adultish in the sense of like the style of like, oh, okay, like everyone's going to be in these college style uniforms and blazers. And I keep saying college, but it's just like, when I think of it, it looks like they're in a college because some of those
yeah.
people
I
have been
guess
there
it's
forever.
technically a
And
high school,
then,
but yeah, boarding school or
yeah, they're
something.
like, oh, we have all these vampire people. We got the sirens here too. We got werewolves, and it's just like when the werewolves transform, they look freaking good. So, but then we get the Hyde, and it's just like, what the hell is this? Like, really? Like, we already have the comedic part down with Uncle Fester. He was a scene stealer. He was so good. Like, I know that character is normally supposed to be like a shock value kind of, not shock value, but like a funny, witty kind of guy. But
Hmm.
oops, what did I do? He was really good. I just canceled out my camera. Whoopsies! But yeah, I was pretty impressed with his acting. I was like, oh, tickle me pink. I really like this Uncle Fester since Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah, Uncle Fest was pretty cool, but I would say that I have. I don't. It's a minor nitpick. It's kind of a minor nitpick that when he comes. I think he comes in like towards the end, like episode 7, I think, or at 6 or 7, around about there, towards the end.
No. It wasn't that late. He leaves at like episode 7. He comes in like 5 or 7. Like five.
Okay.
He either comes in at 5 or 6, and then he leaves around 7
Okay.
because
Cool.
some huge shit happens in 7 and 8.
Okay, he comes in, a little bit into the show, which is fine. Um, but when he comes in and Wednesday showed him the thing, and he's like, "Oh, that's a Hyde," and I just that's my kind of nitpick. One of my nitpicks with the show is that like it just felt like he came in and gave her the answer. You know what I mean? Like she's supposed to be like figuring all this stuff out. So it's like, okay, so had he not been there, what would have happened? You know what I
Right.
mean? I mean,
Well,
I
I
get it.
think
It's
I totally get that, but I
it's a
remember
minor
that
nitpick, I
she was
know, but it's
having a
like,
problem identifying it though,
yeah, but it's
because
like,
she was having
cause
like out of nowhere you just get this God answer, like a
right,
miracle
exactly.
just
That's kind of
drops
what it
it.
felt like a little bit, like just this kind of Deus Ex type thing, where it's like, oh, there it is, and it's like you didn't call Uncle Fester, you didn't think maybe Uncle Fester might know. Let me go check it. He just turned out for whatever reasons he has to turn up there, and it's like, oh, that's a Hyde. It's like, oh, right now we, it's like, all right, well. Just
I'm
like
like,
just
ta-da!
giving
There
it.
you go. You don't have to
Yeah,
work hard. There you
yeah.
go, America. Like, so
But yeah,
easy.
minor nitpick, minor nitpick. But
No,
um,
if we're gonna nitpick, I have to say the
oh yeah, we
romance
can nitpick.
between
Let's go.
Gomez and Morticia, like it was so awkward. Like I know it's supposed to be like overly lovey-dovey, like oh yeah,
Mm,
I miss you, but they overplayed that. They're like, oh yeah, they haven't been separated since their days in high school, and it's just like they've never ever left each other. I don't think they can handle it. And then when they were next to each other, they were just it was like okay, but the jail scene was like too dramatic. It was so over the top acting. It was like not acting. It was like
mm,
painful, and I was like, I don't know about that scene. But another quick nitpick on
yeah.
Morticia, like I know Catherine Zeta's getting older, and they wanted to like I don't know gothify her, so she had a lot of pale makeup. Oh my god, I saw like all the crow's feet. I was like, oh my god, Zeta Jones, you're getting old. I hate this. And last nitpick for her is when she wherever she moved, she had hold on, let me see if I can see that. Okay, she always had to have her arms like this. Like this.
Yeah,
Did you notice? Like when she was walking to the cemetery, like this.
yeah. She's
And I
very
was like,
controlled
who
movements.
does that? It's like, let me show you my sleeves. Are they big? Yes. But at the same time, like, I don't know if she was told to do that, which is okay. That's a direction point. But just
Yeah,
always.
it's no. But I don't know. I mean, I can't remember much from the show. But is Morticia just generally like that or similar to that in the other Addams Family productions?
I would say no because most of the time I remember Carolyn Jones is Morticia. She was more motherly in her emotions, or like she was more normal and natural. So she would be more like this, or like, oh yes, it's such a happy color. Like she was more of a normal person, just had more
Mm,
macabre style things that she liked. And then Angelica Houston's Morticia, she was very different in the sense of like she was what's the word I'm looking for? Um, I don't want to say sublime, but she was very dramatic with her emotions. So when Debbie from Addams Family Values comes in and she's like, "Are you Mrs. Addams?" And she's like, "I am Mrs. Addams." She's very sultry and like dramatic, but she doesn't have like, "I'm
yeah,
dramatic this way."
yeah,
She's just like, "I have presents. What do you want, peasant?" Like
yeah.
dramatic.
Yeah,
That's
there's
probably
a
what she.
bit where I forget which episode it's in, but there's a bit where Morticia and Wednesday are sort of standing near each other. I think it's like an outside by the car, outside of school or something like that, and they're standing maybe I don't know like half a meter apart or whatever it is, but there's like a little sort of gap in between them, and Wednesday's just like this, and Morticia's just kind of like kind of leaning over and doing like the kiss thing, like the kisses, and we're like, okay, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that
um,
one felt really strange too. Like there was just another moment where Wednesday is digging up a grave and she's like, "Oh, I remember you guys playing Wake the Dead." And she's like, "Do you want to help Mother?" And she's like, "No." And I was
yeah,
like, "Oh, that seems very unbecoming." Like I feel like she would actually be like, "Oh, I'll help you later" or something. Like I feel like she would have done something with it as opposed to like, "No, I'm too good. I had to protect my looks."
yeah, I can't remember if she mentioned her hands or nails, but I think because she was looking at her hands, it kind of gave the impression that she didn't want to mess up her hands or nails or something. I can't remember if that's what she said specifically, but no, I remember her looking at her hands and doing something like that, and
Right.
yeah, and then
And
saying no, and so it at least gave the impression that yeah, she didn't want to mess up her manicure or something, or
right. And I thought that was very unbecoming of like Morticia because one of the things that she kind of does in the other shows, at least that I remember, is that she was actually kind of a hands-on parent. Like she's reading books. She did I think she was cooking in one of the other ones. I don't remember. It might have been Lurch. But I remember her actually doing things. And I mean, if you're gardening, even just cutting off the tops of roses, that's still a type of dirt kind of thing. You
mm,
had to mess with things. So I don't know. I feel like they misdid Morticia, unfortunately. Like she's supposed to be like a really nurturing mother. And I think there are points where it's just like this just doesn't feel like what she should have been, even if she was aged up Morticia.
mm. Speaking of Morticia, actually, and well, Wednesday and the whole show, and
Yeah.
one of the things I noticed that kind of stood out, and this is something that, to be fair, that Tim Burton has done plenty of times before. He usually has things about, relationships with a father, and sort of father daddy issues and that kind of thing. He's kind of known for that at this point. But one thing I noticed about this show is that it seemed like a lot of the female students all had strained relationships with their mothers,
Oh my god, right?
and the male students had strained relationships with their fathers. And then the only one who didn't have any kind of parental issues was Eugene, who had two mothers. You
Hmm.
know, so yeah, that kind of stood out to me because on one hand, like I say, Tim Burton's kind of done this sort of thing before, but here it kind of feels like perhaps there's more of a specific point to it, because you have this strange relationship with between Morticia and Wednesday, but when you look at Wednesday's relationship with Gomez, yeah, they kind of but it's a bit more less tension there. And then you look at Enid, who has this really strange relationship with her mother because she's constantly on about becoming a wolf and really kind of getting on about how she's not becoming a wolf and trying to get to cause the conversion and all these therapy things. And wherever her dad is just kind of like laid back and gives her
Oh,
a
let your
hug
mom
and
do it.
is
Like
very
she
kind
knows
of
what she's
comforting.
doing.
Yeah. And then with Tyler, his relationship with his father, they're kind of going back and forth. And then his mother's not
Hey,
in the show,
yeah, that
but
one was interesting because his mom was out of the picture completely.
yeah, he talks about her like in a positive light,
Hmm.
and supposedly the relationship with the father and the mother maybe wasn't always that good either, but they're kind of at each other quite a bit, and Xavier, I don't think his dad is in the show, but I don't remember his dad being in the show specifically, but I think I did note it down that I think when they had that meeting, that parents meeting, he was talking about his dad not showing up. I think.
Oh
Um,
yeah, that's because Xavier's dad is like a super famous psychic medium kind of guy.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
can't come in. And then Xavier's big thing with his dad is that he doesn't know if he can measure up to his dad's like legacy.
Right.
And that's where the strain comes from them.
Yeah. Um.
And then there's Bianca Barclay. Oh
Oh
my
yes, and
god.
Bianca.
I'm
That's
just like
Bianca.
I like okay, Bianca Barclay. She reminded me so much. Did you ever watch Sabrina, the new one on Netflix?
The what? Sorry.
Did you ever watch the new Sabrina on Netflix?
Oh, sorry. No. 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 I ain't seen that.
You haven't? Oh my god, this chick reminds me of one of the girls from Sabrina, and she's like the powerhouse kind of character. And even though she's a side character, she's like super monumental against like the protagonist. But I'm just like, oh, it's so good to see another woman like as strong as you. Okay. And it's just like she actually takes Wednesday down. I was like, oh, let's
Yeah.
go. Take
Let's
that,
see if
put
you
you in your
bleed
place
black and
because
white.
I'm just like, okay, I do like a strong archetype like protagonist, but it also makes me really happy to see like the protagonist being put in their place. Like they still have areas to grow. You know what I mean? Because
Mm.
it's just like in comes Wednesday. I'm the hot shit. I got expelled. This is the last place I can go before like I can't go anywhere else. And then it's like, oh, you're fancy, ha ha ha. So am I. I'm gonna take your position and put you in your place. No, bitch, sit down. That's not nice, but still.
Yeah, I liked what they did with Bianca in the beginning between her and Wednesday. I thought that made sense to have kind of a sort of antagonist of sorts. I would say that it did feel, in fact, I'm kind of contradicting myself a little bit about nailing that 8 to 10 episode arc because it did kind of feel like when by the time Bianca and Wednesday are a bit more on the same page, that did feel a little bit, kind of smooth, kind of rushed over a little bit because it's like she finds that she's part of the Nightshade secret society,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not quite friends right away. And then you have the whole thing with like Lucas and his friends and the outcasts and hating outcasts, and then Lucas doing the thing with the school and that whole thing. But yeah, by the time you get to like Bianca and I think it was like after one of the was it after the party
Are you
after
talking
some
about
event
After the
anyway.
Raven?
Yeah, I think it was after some event. I forget exactly, but it was after some event. They're kind of sitting next to each other, and it just seemed like from there they're friends. Well, not friends, but they're
I mean, they worked
friends.
out some of their differences after the Raven, which kind of made me really happy.
Well,
Of
yeah, I think it
like,
was the Raven actually. 'Cause, yeah, it was a dance, wasn't it?
yeah,
Which
yeah.
your cosplayer, I'm guessing, is based on.
Woo! Sort of. Okay, so I don't know if you're in my Discord, but in my Discord, like a few years ago, I was like, "Hey guys, should I buy this dress?" And they're like, "You should get it." And I'm like, "If I find it on sale, I'll get it because it's pretty expensive. It was like 50 quid. You know what I mean?" I'm like, I'm not about to spend 50 quid on an H&M dress. H&M is supposed to be inexpensive. But so lo and behold, I actually found it for like 20, and I was like, "Okay, we're gonna commit." So I got it, and then Wednesday came out, and I was like, "Wow, I already have a Wednesday dress. Screw you, bitches!"
So you did it
Look
first,
at
really.
that. Yeah, it's like really good because hold on, let me show you guys the fit. So like it actually has the buttons. The only thing I need to do is like take off the sleeves, and then it's like the perfect dress, and it's got like length. But at the same time, I'm just like I still want to make my own,
Well, you gotta learn a dance now, though. You have to do the Wednesday dance.
like this one.
Yeah, that
It's
that
like
whole yeah, washing your hair and
yeah, and then like
pouncing.
this.
Yeah.
I don't remember the rest, but I know that it went viral on like all of social media, and
Yeah.
I'm just like watching that scene. I knew it was going to get viral, and I'm just like,
It was a
okay,
pretty cool dance scene actually because I feel like it very much suited the character they made for Wednesday. From all the things she's interested in to just how she is. If she's gonna dance, it just felt like that's exactly how she would dance. And part of it was kind of based on, the old school Addams Family, where they had Wednesday teaching Lurch how to dance. So she's doing a very similar move at points.
this one.
Yeah, well, it was pretty cool, and yeah, I think there's no surprise that you saw that people, I guess, people trying to copy it on TikTok and all that kind of stuff, and yeah, it was a pretty cool scene. Pretty cool scene. Probably, I'd imagine the scene that's probably going to get most remembered. Like years from now. And I think that's probably going to be the thing that people most remember about the show.
Oh, absolutely. I would have to say, like, because it's a shocker in a sense of like, we thought that we, as the viewer, might think that she's actually antisocial and doesn't want to go to this. And it was like really apparent that she was like trying not to go, but had no other choice but to go. And then she gets in
Yeah,
trouble. And so like, Thing did his 5-finger discount. It's like, you're going.
yeah,
It's like, God damn it. And I feel like it was meant to happen. But on that note, it's just kind of like, what is she going to do? Like, how is she going to dance? Is she going to be like, because she's got a date, And it's like, are you going to dance like Morticia and Gomez did with their like tango style? Or are you going to like this, just spin? Or are you actually going to dance? And it was interesting to see her like actually dance because at this point we're like, do you have that kind of skill? Are you acquitted with dancing at all? Do you like music? Actually, she was amazing actually playing. I'm saying actually a lot. The cello. Like the
right. Yeah,
painted black
painted.
scene was
Yes.
the best. Excuse me. That is one of my favorite parts. We actually have a cello, and I'm just like, I might have to learn how to do this now.
Yeah, no, that was pretty awesome, and I think just again like the way she was playing it, it felt very much in character, not just playing it, but playing it in character as well. Just like the slight lean forward, the intense stare, and yeah, just on the balcony, and Enid wondering
Oh
how she
god.
got Chella out on the balcony.
Oh my god. So I was watching some of like questions from Jenna Ortega on like entertainment or something YouTube. And she had
Right.
said that Tim Burton noticed she didn't blink during one take, like an entire take. And he's like, don't ever blink when we're filming. So for the entire season, like for the entire time, whenever she was on camera, she tried not to blink. And that's why if you ever watch it a second time after this, like you'll notice she never blinks in any of her scenes because she was told not to. and then her eyes get like dried out, and it looks like more intense. I was like, wow, that's amazing.
That, yeah. I mean, I didn't. I mean, I did watch it twice actually, but I didn't notice that either time. I guess. Well, I guess I didn't know to look
I guess
for it.
it's third time.
But yeah, I'd have to. If I do watch it a third time, I'd definitely try and look out for that. But that's. I mean, that's got to be tough to do because I mean, I'm sure like, if you've ever tried to do like a staring contest and you get to maybe like I don't know 20 seconds or so, 20 30 seconds, and it's so difficult because at that point you have to force your eyes to stay open. You know what I mean? You can't just like stare like because your eyes get dry, it starts to itch, and then you just
Oh yeah.
like this after a while. You know?
There's your thumbnail.
Yeah.
Itchy eyes.
It's like let me just blink.
Yeah. But that's just some of the crazy stuff. And I remember like just hearing how her days were. Like she had to be at hair and makeup at 4 a.m. film until like something, and then she had to do like combat practice and then cello practice, then sleep. And I was like, oh my god. And that was for like 8 months of filming. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow. But guess what? You're like famous, super famous now. You're like on the map.
Yeah, no, that's intense, and I guess it shows. One thing I saw actually, speaking of behind the scenes stuff, Thing. So Thing was played by a whole person.
Yeah.
And they, he was in like I think it was like a green suit or blue
It's
suit or
a blue
something.
suit.
They of course, edit him out and they just have his hand and they have like an attachment up there to or for the nub. But that was pretty impressive, actually, because they could have done CGI or they could have used maybe just a hand, some kind of detached hand puppet or something. But they had a whole person just doing all the movements and things like that, which I thought was just really cool. But that must have been hard to film as well because, yeah, you could edit him out later, but it's still a bunch of scenes where he's going to be there. How many
Oh my
people must have
gosh,
been
right? And it's just like,
stepping on
how
that
are you
wall?
gonna like just have him like on your shoulder and then you walk away and then he has
Right,
to
and
crouch crawl behind you?
you got somebody there and people just kind of
Like,
walking past and it's like you have to step over this guy.
I have to give him major props though, because being like, okay, first off, being a hand model is one thing. Being a parts actor is like another. And I think he did an amazing job with just giving so much personality to Thing, as opposed to just like, hey, well, yeah, look, I can do sign language, yeah, and like do this, that, and it's just like really funny. I thought Thing was awesome, and it's like the fact that they actually gave Thing scars and like damage
Yeah,
wounds.
and
I think that gave
the
it so
stitches.
much personality. So it wasn't just like, oh, look, it's just a random hand. That sounds so gross.
I actually have a question about Thing though. And you mentioned a finger discount that when he stole the address. How exactly would he have stolen? I mean, okay,
You create a distraction. It's pretty simple.
right, but he has to get that dress from the shop to the school, neat, clean, not being seen. Like, how is he dragging a dress? Did he put it in a box? Is he dragging a box? Like,
Okay. So you want to hear my awesome theory how this happened?
All right,
because I would love a little hand puppet thing to get me pretty dresses like this. But anyways, that's why I have a husband. That's awful. Do not, no. My husband gets me nice things. Anyway, so my idea is that he sets up a taxidermy kind of thing and leaves shit tons of chipmunks and squirrels at the doorstep or something. And then he goes through the back, like in a window, and he grabs a box and he opens the box and then throws it on the ground next to the mannequin. He climbs up the mannequin and slowly undoes the buttons, and then it falls directly inside the box somehow. No, that doesn't make sense because you can't get it off the mannequin if there's no buttons. But anyways, that's another problem. I don't know the full details on how this dress looks. Anyways, he drags it inside the box and then wraps the box. And then he hijacks someone else's car because Thing's amazing, apparently. And then he gets inside the car with the box and then he gets back, crashes the car somewhere so no one can find it, and then brings it up because no one knows. No, everyone's at class, and then he hides it. And then he types this special letter to Tyler and then goes off and delivers it. Well, no. Okay, reverse that. So before he kills all of those little chipmunks and like squirrels, he sends off the letter to Tyler, gets the dress, and then goes back to the high school.
Oh, wait, so he kills the chipmunks and the squirrels.
Yes.
So Thing,
he can climb.
In your theory, Thing kills chipmunks and squirrels to steals a dress. So that he can steal a dress.
Yeah, he has to. He has to. You know why?
I'm not sure I like Thing anymore if he's killing chipmunks and squirrels. That sounds pretty mean.
Like, he has to kill the chipmunks and squirrels to create the diversion because the person who runs the oddity shop that has the dress makes taxidermies. Oh, no, she doesn't make the taxidermies. I'm incorrect. So she gets the taxidermies. So what she could do is be all like, look at all these chipmunks and squirrels. And she takes it to the person that does taxidermy, which is the doctor chick. And so goes to the doctor chick and is like, hey, look at all these chipmunks and squirrels. It's like, wow, that's a lot of chipmunks and squirrels. How much do you want for them? It's like, I don't know. They just came up on my doorstep. So she's over there for quite some time. So Thing's got a lot of time on his hand to be able to get that dress out of there because he's, killed those chipmunks and squirrels.
Well, I mean, Addams Family, I guess killing chipmunks and squirrels is probably like.
I mean, they kill a kid. They've killed multiple people in this series.
Yeah, in the beginning. They she puts the piranhas in the swimming pool, isn't it? So
he's not dead. They just castrate him.
I mean, it's still pretty.
He loses a testicle.
That's still pretty violent, though.
I mean, that's a way to introduce the series as like, this is gonna get dirty and dark. Woo. But yeah, so that's my theory on how he gets the dress and gets the message to Tyler in time. Do you like it?
Interesting theory. That's an interesting theory. I mean, yeah, I guess you kill a bunch of chipmunks and squirrels, create distraction, then get the dress off the mannequin, put it in a box, get the box into a car. Somebody's driving a car, crashes it somewhere, and you put the. I mean, yeah, it's elaborate, but yeah, I mean, it's
okay. Up until he hijacks the car, okay, that might be a little far fetched. Okay. So instead of a car, he gets a skateboard, puts the box on the skateboard, and he drags it back.
I mean, I guess if you're just a hand, you kind of have to literally think outside the box if you're going to steal a whole dress. So yeah, that could be it.
I mean, if you're gonna, I'm not someone that is big into theft. I like to pay for the items that I like to procure. But if I needed to take something without the use of money, a distraction is the way to go.
Yeah, no, for sure. Especially when, you are just a hand. If somebody sees you, you can be captured pretty easily. I think it was right hand. Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm. I guess I didn't really pay much attention, but yeah, I think it was a right hand. Yeah, I think because I'm pretty sure they said something about not being a lefty or something. I think they made a comment about not being a lefty. So yeah, right hand. I'm pretty sure it's a right hand.
Oh yeah, that's right. Because everyone's like, he's my right hand man. But that's my theory on how he got the dress, and I'm just like, it makes sense.
So with let's I had something written down. It's about that was it. Gomez. That was it. Speaking of killing things, Gomez gets accused of killing the guy was it 30 years ago, right?
Yeah. Forget his name. It's not Eugene. Who be him? Who be the kid that died?
Yeah, Garrett Gates. And so it turns out he didn't do it, but Wednesday was trying to prove his innocence, right? And again, this is maybe kind of a little bit of a nitpick as well, but I kind of felt like rather than trying to prove his innocence, it would it would be more fitting for Wednesday to be trying to prove his guilt, and then maybe being disappointed that he didn't actually do it.
See, I think so too. because like during the show she's writing a murder mystery as well, right? So it's just
Yeah.
like I'm curious why they went that route of, oh, okay, let me plant this evidence on him, XYZ, blah 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 blah. But it's just kind of like, why don't you just do this or that or this or that? And it just seemed really strange that they planted evidence on him to prove that he's a bad guy, and I'm like, I don't like that. Meh. 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 Meh.
Yeah. But in the end, it was like the guy he had the nightshade poisoning that broke and it made him go wild, and it's kind of crazy though that that's supposed to happen 30 years ago, and it literally took 30 years for somebody. It was like Morticia saying something like he was foaming at the mouth, and that's when Wednesday's like, oh, it must be nightshade poisoning, and it's like, really, nobody thought of that 30 years ago. Like,
I don't think so, because
like,
remember the way that happened was they were all at a party. They were all at the Raven kind of thing back 30 years ago. So they were all like, oh yeah, we're gonna have a good time, not paying attention. And then here's Wednesday. She could have actually just read that like 2 hours ago about nightshade poisoning, because that might have been in her class. You don't know. But it's just kind of like
fair. Just like
also Morticia did not have potions on her mind that day. She was all about getting in Gomez's pants.
Yeah, I think that they probably, yeah, I mean they were probably a bit more focused on other things, but I don't know. I was just, but then again, yeah, if no, to be fair, I think if Morticia mentioned he was foaming at the mouth to one of the police sergeants, they probably wouldn't think about nightshade poisoning. And at the time, he probably just looked angry and pissed off, and who would have thought it was nightshade? Yeah, so yeah, no, I guess fair enough.
Right, and the whole thing about that situation was because he was in love with Morticia, and she's turned him down, and he didn't want to like. I have a feeling like he didn't want to hurt her, but because of his family's legacy, he felt like pressured that he had to do something. So regardless, he still had to have the nightshade poisoning, even if he wasn't going to do anything. Like, it's kind of like, oh, you could have just left that in the car, but that doesn't dismay the fact that you still get stabbed, bitch. Like,
they also bring up that Weems, the current, well, I guess now former, she gets killed, but the prime minister, what's up with that? The principal, the school principal. They bring up that 30 years ago she was, in love with Gomez, but lost out to that. But they bring it up, but they don't really do much with it. And I guess to be fair, they don't have to. Of course, it's just, and there's nothing there. But it does seem kind of like, why bring that up and then not have it affect the story in a way? Because you had this other guy who was in love with Morticia, and it ended up, ended up dying because of the nightshade that broke in his chest and all that kind of stuff. All the while, Weems was in love with Gomez, getting turned down, and her heartbreak just seems to kind of get ignored, So it's kind of like, all right, so we're just gonna gloss over it.
I think the only time that it kind of like circled back and was addressed was when Morticia and Gomez goes to the high school for Parent Day, and she's like, "Oh, look at our yearbook," and she's like, "Huh, my picture's not in here." And it's because, she ripped it out and burned it. But other than that, it's like, that doesn't make any sense for her to mention this. It's like, I think it's more of a foil to be like, oh yeah, the principal's after Wednesday. So it's part of the murder mystery of like, who is after Wednesday? As opposed to like, oh, let's actually go somewhere with this because we need to focus on who is going to be the bad person. And of course, like, I think what they did do was try to just make it look like she kept so many tabs on her on purpose, not just as a principal, but also out of her like, oh yeah, I don't like Wednesday because she's an Atom kind of thing. This potential like theory of like, oh yeah, she doesn't like her because she's her student, and like now she's owing a favor. She's doing a favor for Morticia, so maybe she could get back at her that way. Potentially, you never know.
Yeah, Wednesday could have been Weems' daughter. How about that?
What?
And Weems doesn't seem to move on too much.
Like Larissa, like Weems, like Gwendolyn Christie, I remember reading a report saying that she's never felt so beautiful on screen
Yeah,
until that
yeah,
role. And I was like, yeah, because everyone's always putting you as like the general or like a soldier or a knight. And I'm like, you make it seem like that's a bad thing though. Like I
yeah,
would like to have that role of being like, hey, look at me, I'm badass. But like finally seeing her in such a more pristine, like clean, like proper lady kind of role was such a shocker too. Because I was like, wow, she turned up. Okay.
yeah. I think I've only really seen her in was it the Last Jedi? No, the Star Wars movie. So was it the Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and I think
Did you not see her in Game of Thrones?
I never watched Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay, that's fair. You know, and then she's also in Sandman. Sandman, I think that's what it's called. The Netflix show
Oh yeah,
by.
no, I don't watch that either.
I didn't watch it, but I know she's in it. I think she's Death, quote unquote. I don't remember. I didn't watch it. She's either Death or Lucifer, one of the two. Okay, I didn't watch it. I only know of it. It's on my to-do list. I'm a mother. I don't have time.
But yeah, and I did like her character though, and she definitely did play it well. And I also what I thought was really cool as well is the fact that she's such a tall person and Jenna Ortega's such a short person. And so when you see them stand next to each other and the camera kind of backs out to see the difference, it really looks like she's just towering over this girl as they're talking to each other. But the way Wednesday just kind of holds her own and just stays is very kind of expressionless, expressionless character. While Weems is, I don't want to say losing it, but certainly expressing a whole lot more frustration and anger. And of course you got the light from the fireplace coming through, and she's just kind of like there. And I know I'm not the only one to say this, but you see something like that and it's like if they ever make a Resident Evil 8 movie and need a was it Lady Dimitrescu,
Yes,
like
Mama.
right,
Hey, Vampire Bobby
Christie right there.
Sorry,
Right
I
there.
cosplayed as her, and I got a lot of shit from that. But I had like 200 centimeter shoes, like they were stacked like this big. It's on my YouTube channel. But I did Lady Dimitrescu, and everyone's like, "Oh, you're not tall enough to be Dimitrescu." I'm like, "Hold on, let me take my shoes off so you'll see." And then like I literally went from like here down to, and they're like, "Holy shit, you're so tiny!" I'm like, "That's what happens when you're just a small human." Like I'm not as tall as Bandit over here, but I tried. But Gwendolyn Christie for Lady Dimitrescu, yes, please. Like I will buy tickets. I will buy merch for that one. I want to see it.
Yeah, that would be a good casting for, of course, not just but the fact that she, and even just like from her character as Weems. To be fair, I've not played Resident Evil 8 yet, so
Oh, you haven't?
not yet. So my knowledge of Lady Dimitrescu is quite limited. But from what I know of her from like videos and things that I've seen, yeah, though the Weems character seems quite close almost to Lady Dimitrescu. I mean, I think Lady Dimitrescu, at least from what I can tell, maybe not as frustrated. Well, I guess it depends on the scene, but certainly like where the way she seems to move, like the kind of swing around as she turns, seems very similar. So
I would say like no, they're very synonymous in their roles because Dimitrescu is very like, oh, I need to take care of my girls and what I do, and then with how Larissa, the principal, she's like, I need to take care of my school, and if I need to work with you over here, I'll do it. And it's like I'm not going to try to make anyone happy other than who I have to make happy and make sure like my daughters or my students are safe. I almost said tutorlings. No, students and daughters. They're two different characters. Yeah. But I could totally see like the synonymous, like it's very synonymous because Lady Dimitrescu has so many scenes where she's like pissed. And one of the scenes is where she actually like throws at her like makeup desk or something. And then like Larissa, we can tell that she gets mad and she wants to break shit. But I think she takes it out with alcohol, and Dimitrescu makes red wine. So, yeah.
All right, so they're pretty close then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think you'll love Resident Evil 8. I really like it. I've already done 2 cosplays from it.
Yeah, I need to get around to that. I did play Resident Evil 7 maybe a couple of years back, I think now, but I don't always get to play games when they're brand new. I know Resident Evil 8's been out for a while, so I probably should get around to that eventually.
They do have DLC content for that one as well. But Resident Evil 4, like, no, not trying to shoot like a promo here, but Resident Evil 4 is having their remake come out soon as well, so 8 should go down in price. I like Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 scared the crap out of me. I tried playing it. I got to a certain part, got scared as fuck, stopped playing. Yeah, I literally like turned off the game and started crying. I was so scared.
What, for Resident Evil 8 or 4?
No, 4.
For 4, okay.
Yeah, Resident Evil 8, I wouldn't say scared me, but there was okay, little like story time off of Wednesday.
All right, cool.
I was a young little lady. I'm still little, but I'm not young. But I feel that way. Anyways, so there's this special part in Resident Evil 4 where you have to fight this monster type of character, and it's faceless. It's a pure white albino, like slimy looking body. I say slimy looking because it's got a shine to it, and it just like jerks and shakes, and it has like a specific sound. Hold on, and it's kind of like. And I was like, what is that? Why, die! And I was shooting it, and it would just regenerate its parts, hence the name Regenerator. And I was like terrified. I was like, I don't know what to do. It was so scary. I'm still traumatized, I think. And I was just like, this is before, the internet really gave you all like the walking guides, and you had to buy like the Nintendo magazine so you know.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't want to play this anymore. It was so terrifying for like a young child. I wasn't that young, but I'm just saying, I was young. It was so scary just seeing this albino slimy like thing.
I'm sure I remember that thing on Resident Evil 4.
Do you remember it? No,
I'm not sure I do. I remember like stuff where their heads would come apart and little.
No. Okay, it's past the village. It's past the village. Like you have to get done with the village. And then you had to get inside like the church kind of thing. And then it's like in a laboratory, like a special little part. And I remember because like it like you can go up to the thing and you see it lying on the autopsy table. And I remember this so clearly. And then you go to the other side, get a key card, come back, and then it gets off the table. And then it's chasing you and it's shaking. And it's like, And then, like, later my brother told me what I had to do because he beat the game before me, and I didn't watch him do this part. But it was, like, so terrifying. It was terrifying.
That sounds very Resident Evil, but I haven't played that game for so long. I guess maybe it's because I don't know. Maybe the scene was so terrifying and traumatic that I just blocked it out of my memory, and I just
okay. Will it help you if I tell you you had to actually run past it? So you can't even kill it at this moment. You have to run past it, get the thermal scope for your gun, and then you can see the plagas on its body to shoot it so it will stop regenerating.
No, one second. Let me see if I can find a picture of this
thing. Oh my gosh, you're gonna look up.
I'm not remembering it. So it's called a Regenerator, you said, yeah?
Yes, absolutely. Oh my god.
Regenerator, Resident Evil 4.
It's so ugly.
I'm drawing a blank on this.
I'm scarred. Help. Oh my gosh. Yes, just absolutely no. Okay, I hate those. No.
Okay.
Yeah, Regenerator. Like, okay, it has a face. It's got like.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you remember?
Yeah, I feel like I remember. I guess I'm vaguely, but yeah.
I hate these things. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh goodness.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't want to see this in high definition. No.
All right. Cool. Let me. But yeah, it's been a long time. I guess I haven't really thought about it, but yeah.
I know why.
All right. Cool. Oh
Oh,
snap!
now
Well,
you're scared.
yeah, that was probably shouldn't have looked that up, but I think I vaguely remember it. Um, all
I'm
right, so
traumatized. I'm traumatized by a video game.
moving on before we get more traumatized. Uh, there's a quote in Wednesday that came up. It's a Mary Shelley quote. So Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, which happens to be one of my favorite books ever. Um, and they use a quote which is, "No man chooses evil because it is evil. He only mistakes it for happiness, the good he seeks." And I like that quote. I think that's probably true. Maybe not for every person, but I think that's probably true for most people, that when we as we go through life, we don't necessarily do things because we think it's evil and it's bad. It's just we're searching for something, we're looking for something, and the things that come to us that we think are, good and pure and everything else, we don't necessarily realize that it might not be. But what's your thoughts on that quote?
So it's kind of like toxic relationships to me. Like you think it's gonna be good, and then little do you know, slowly it chips away at you, and then
Mm,
it just becomes
yeah,
like a giant sledge pull. And it's just like you're actually seeking something to make you happy, to comfort you, and to be your point, right? Of happiness. But actually it's kind of like, oh no, this person's abusive in XYZ way. I'm not saying I'm glorifying any of this, but it's kind of like you didn't choose this.
yeah,
You thought you were doing something right, but actually it's not. And it's kind of like the villain complex, right? Of like how people are like, oh, I have my truth, and my truth is, XYZ is bad for the world, so I'm going to get rid of it. It's like, well, if you do XYZ, then you're actually hurting the environment, you're hurting like XYZ else. And, did you ever consider why XYZ was there in the first place? And it's like, yeah, in their mind, it's for the good of the environment, but it's not. It's actually really bad. So imagine someone saying like, "Oh, I need to get rid of all the world's chocolate." It's like, no, that's horrendous. That's so evil. It's like, no, I mean, like we wouldn't have like bad sugar problems and bad diabetes or blah 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 blah. I'm not saying chocolate causes diabetes. I'm just saying, like, as an example of the villain complex, and it's very interesting in that idea of like evil is defined as potential happiness, but it's gone wrong. But really, it's just kind of like, where was I going with that? My thought. It's kind of like the eye of the beholder defines what is evil as well.
mm,
So it's like I could say, oh, chocolate and sugars are all bad for you. And it's like, no, I think it's okay, in moderation.
yeah.
And it's just like, then you have
Makes
the
you
extreme
happy.
side of it's like, I can only eat chocolate and candy. Like, what is this?
Yeah, that's yeah. I think that's an interesting way to look at it, actually. I mean, I guess it's kind of like one of these things where, as you say, you're doing things because you think it's a good thing to do, and as you're doing it, and at some point you're gonna might realize that maybe it's not as good as you thought. But what keeps you going is, or what keeps you doing it could be, sometimes we have an ego about things. We don't like to admit that we got something wrong, or in the case of toxic relationships, sometimes it's the case of like, family pressures and or societal pressures to be with somebody, and that you don't want to be with because like it makes the family look good, or and that kind of thing.
Oh,
I'm not
absolutely.
suggesting that's the only reason, of course, but potentially some of the reasons. But yeah, I feel like sometimes we get to a point where we realize the thing we're doing isn't that good for us, but it's other forces that keep us bound to it, and it could be very, very difficult to kind of break away from. And I know we're kind of getting a bit sidetracked a little bit, but because you mentioned toxic relationships, and I know one of the things that tends to come up with these sorts of things is, why don't they go to the police, or why don't they tell anybody, and this sort of thing. And it can often be this pressure that people face, this kind of unseen pressure that people get from their, whether it's their families, whether it's their friends, whether it's just society at large, to be this thing, to represent this thing, to uphold this idea, and then maybe you kind of convince yourself that that's the greater good of it all, but really that's really what's keeping you bound to this situation that is not healthy for you, and trying to break away from that is difficult. It's not an easy thing, because we are, again, we're emotional. We're not always like Wednesday, where we could just be like, yep, I'm doing this, no, I'm not doing this anymore. For the most part, we are very emotionally attached to things, and I feel like a big part of life is trying to balance out your emotions along with your logic, because if you're too logical, as we see in Wednesday, it doesn't go so well. Of course, if you're too emotional, as we all know in life, where we've been too emotional, it doesn't go so well. So we're
Right.
trying to figure out this balance as to being emotional enough to experience humanity, but logical enough to understand when things are not good for you. And that's easier said than done, So yeah,
Oh yeah, kind of crazy.
yeah, indeed. Um, there was another quote. Not quote. Sorry, I mean, there's loads of quotes in the show, of course, but there was another thing that came up, which I thought was interesting as well, where they said, uh, Faulkner describes, Faulkner. I think I'm assuming Faulkner's a fictional character in the show, but anyway,
Yeah, he's the guy who categorized all of the unique creatures. So like
yeah,
he figured out what werewolves, sirens, like that's who that guy is. Not to cut you
yeah.
off.
That's all right. So yeah, they said Faulkner describes Hyde as artists by nature, and I thought that was a really interesting way of describing Hyde, because Hyde is like, sometimes a human, sometimes the monster, um, and I kind of feel like that when it comes to creativity, that you almost like two different people at times. When you like sort of like really deep in your mind of creativity, that's almost like the monster side of it. But then you go to work the next day, and you try to keep that in check, and most people don't ever see
Oh.
that.
Oh, I didn't know that's where you were going with that.
I mean, I
I
guess
thought
there's a few different analogies you can draw, but yeah, I just thought that was a really interesting way to describe it, because I feel like artists can be that kind of tortured soul at times. Or I don't know, what did you think of that?
Oh, so I thought it was more like when Hyde's are artists by nature, it's like when you're creating content, you either love it or you hate it. And
Right.
it's kind of like the hot Jekyll and Hyde. It's like, oh, I'm creating something so magical. And then the Hyde is like, this is the worst piece of shit that I've ever made. I hate this. Like that's
Mm,
so it's like that's why you're often a tortured soul. I don't think I know of many artists or content creators that are like completely always happy like all the time making content. And it's just like I've seen so many of my favorite YouTubers recently even say, I need a break from doing this. I'm not happy, like blah 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 blah. And
mm,
it's creative burnout at that point. And that's kind of the torture because if you're not making the video, you're not making your money. If you're up at that point.
yeah, and then all the
And
stresses of
that's their kind of
financial and
torture.
yeah.
And so it's kind of in that essence. And it's like if you are a thriving artist, then are you actually are you actually being true to yourself? Are
Mm,
you just doing it for the money at that part? And then that becomes like the torture on them because it's like I can just make this piece of art because I have to sell it, or is it like am I being true to my art? And it's very difficult to like assess is your success for people then you know that they're going to buy it or like it view it xyz, or are you doing it because you want to like
mm.
and it becomes that like whole cycle. That's how I just like understood that one.
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, I think I definitely see that as well. Where in creativity, it's a lot of things. A lot of great things, but yeah, like you say, it could be a lot of bad things as well. And it's almost like they're like two different sides of you, like the calm. I mean, humans aren't necessarily calm, but you know what I mean. Like the normal side, so to speak, and then the monster side where things aren't so great, and you are kind of like kind of sitting alone wondering if you're just a fraud that got lucky, or you just that one good thing that you did, and you just can't think of anything else, and sometimes when you're striving for perfection, which, as I'm sure perfection is the thief of joy. But we do that as artists, where we kind of strive for this idea of perfection, and that just isn't achievable. So yeah, we're part of the torture comes from ourselves. Part of the torture comes from a pressure that gets put on you as a creative. As you said, if you're somebody who makes money from this, then it's like you got to keep putting stuff out. But what happens when you just can't think of anything, or you're generally not happy with what you're putting out, but you're putting it out anyway? And it's like, am I really being true to myself, or am I just doing it because this is what's expected of me, and I'm
Oh
just
yeah.
going with what's expected of me? And it's being trapped in that cycle, and feeling like or even the times where you might feel like you've got so much to say, but does anybody want to say it, or say anyone want to hear it, because all they want from you is this particular form of content. That's what people watch. That's what pays your bills. That's what keeps your name in that relevancy. The moment you try to start putting out other things, like, hey, how about this? Nobody cares. So you got all these things you're trying to get out into the world, but it's just like there's a block of how to do it, because nobody. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of that kind of, this is who you are, this is who the world sees, and yeah.
Yeah, you can't branch out from like your core, like what people came to see and hear. So it's like, oh, people came to see your sketches, and then you go off on some religious kind of tangent, and then they're like, no, we don't want
Yeah.
that.
We're good. Where your sketches at? Where your sketches at? But of course, the other side of that, the consumer side of that, is, of course, they under no obligation to, like anything that you put out. So it's kind of trying to understand that as well, isn't it? Because whatever you put out into the world, whether this content or that content, just because they liked one thing doesn't mean they have to like the other thing. And I think for the most part, creatives understand that, but it doesn't mean that it hurts. That's when it starts to happen. It still sucks when it happens, when you try to put stuff out, and it's like,
Oh,
okay.
absolutely. Like, I think one of the hardest part about being a creative is just putting it out there, because a lot of people are just so terrified of knowing what others are going to think of it, unless it's like supposed to be comedically funny. Because like if you try to do something that's like serious or something, like how are people going to react? Is it supposed to be like a shock value or something? But yeah.
You know what though? I found that even when it comes to, say, comedic content, that could be there could be issues there as well, because like, well, more so is, I think it's more so to the with, like, if you're not particularly known. I think if you're a bit more known, then it's maybe less. I'm sure it's still an issue. It's maybe less of an issue, because people kind of know, oh, he's supposed to be trying to be funny, right? But when, like, you're unknown, or nobody really knows who you are, even though you're putting out jokes or whatever, I find like a lot of times people look at it and feel like you try and talk. They respond to the comments like you're trying to make a serious point about something. It's like, bro, it's just. So yeah, it could get exhausting trying to explain something that was supposed to be a joke, and it's like, I don't want to keep explaining this. This is long. But yeah, I like that quote for Hyde's artist by nature. I think that holds true to the creative process in many different ways. So yeah, let's. I guess it's a good time to start wrapping up, though. Before we do, there were some questions that
Yes.
it kind of ended on. I guess potential things for season 2, which has been confirmed.
Oh my god, right! I'm so excited for
Yeah,
it.
and there's a few questions. So I noted, are there other players, other players other than Marilyn? Marilyn, Christina Ricci's character, pretending to be the
The
teacher.
normie teacher.
Yeah, all the while she was conspiring against them to bring back
The
Joseph
first spoiler of the show.
Crackstone.
We haven't
um,
really spoiled much this time, okay? We've been
yeah,
pretty good.
I mean, we kind of, yeah. Well,
Oh, here's my hip.
we're like nearly an hour into this. We're good.
I mean, we
um,
didn't say a lot. Okay, we didn't say a lot. I'm just saying that, but just in case.
Yeah, they've been warned. They'll
Anyway,
be fine.
so we're at the end of the podcast. If you made it this far, and you could have also like done all that other thing. So you were saying Maryland. Are there other players?
Yeah. So
What
are
do you
there other players? Is someone else potentially controlling Tyler, or indeed is Tyler? Is he in control of himself? Can he go in and out of being a Hyde by will? So it kind of ends on some of those
like a spoiler?
questions. Do you have any thoughts or theories on that, or what could potentially, or what we could potentially see in
Okay,
season 2?
so I think Tyler. I think Tyler can suppress it to a certain extent, but if his emotions go too out of control, he can't. But it kind of showed that he has like a BPD, kind of like a bipolarism kind of
Mm-hmm.
personality. So yes and no. He can control the Hyde personality, but he can't do it all the time. So like if he's in like his like, oh, I love you Wednesday state, he can't do it. Or he can do it. But if he's in his like, oh haha, I'm now kind of evil like he was at the prison, like maybe he can, but I feel like he would not really care either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then other players than Maryland, absolutely. Oh my God. Okay, that school runs on benefactors, so it's just like, okay, that's been there for a long time, keeping those students in check, and some of them are like hundreds of years old because they're vampires. So it's just kind of like, okay, there has to be someone else in charge, knowing that something's gonna happen, and it's like, okay, I know that people like I know that Marilyn like changed her name. Okay, that's cool and all. But I mean, you have psychic people at that school. You can't tell me none of the other professors who didn't be all like, let me touch you, and then be all like kind of situation, Like I don't believe that for a second that no one
Well,
else could figure it
she
out
did
and
kind of
just
keep
not
herself to herself, though. She kind of stayed in her flower room, isn't it? So she didn't really mingle much. So maybe that was the reason why.
I mean, it's possible, but I think it's going to be interesting because I think I don't remember if this is speculation or not. I was trying to just look at this. Angelica Houston, season 2, I believe she's been
Oh, there
cast.
rumors playing somebody in
Yeah,
season 2.
yeah, and it's just like I was asking for this on Twitter. I was like, if Angelica Houston comes back as the previous principal before Weems, I would be so floored.
Oh, how
I'd be
cool would
so
that be?
excited because if she is that person, or if it's okay, the rumor is also Joan Cusack, who played Debbie from Addams Family Values, who marries Fester. So she's supposed to be dead from that series. Anyways, if any of those two become the next principal or the previous principal replacement for Weems, I'd be so happy. And I'm like, front runner for me is Angelica Houston has to come to Wednesday. Even if it's just a cameo spot, just any kind of spot for her, I want it. Like, I will be so delighted. But I would also imagine that she could potentially be a somewhat villain, not a full villain like how Christine Ricci's character is, but absolutely. I think there's other people other than Marilyn that want to do things. Because if you remember, the sheriff was all like, oh, you weirdos from that school, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of prejudice. And so I'm like, oh, there's got to be some kind of like revolt to like tear down the school. There has to be. Especially because now that she's got a stalker. Oh.
Yeah, like, because was it Xavier gave her the phone,
Right.
and then all of a sudden she's getting text messages from a random person. It's like, who else has that number? Like, he just gave her the phone. Who else has that number? If it's presumably not Xavier, right? Presumably. I mean, it could be, but
it's really
presumably it
strange.
isn't. But who else has that number, right? And especially as he just gave it to her. It's not like he had it for a while. Just gave it to her. So somebody would
he
have...
could have had it for a while. It could have been like his dead sister's phone. We don't know his full family story, his lineage. You
But
know,
then
like all we know
somebody,
is that he gave her a gift, and we think it's a brand new phone. See, what the thing we didn't notice, she never took off like the plastic shits. You know, when you get a new phone,
oh yeah.
it's already set up. That's the problem.
But then he did say he already put his number in it though,
Yes,
so
but
he
that
would have
could
taken off the
also
plastic
mean
stuff
someone
first.
else took the phone, found out the number when he wasn't looking, get back, and then,
Yeah.
because like it was so easy for her to sneak into his room, hear his conversation with Bianca, and be all like, "I'm just hiding underneath your bed," ho 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 ho, and it's just like, okay, someone else could have done the same thing, took the number and been like, "Haha, now I'm watching you, bitch," like because, you know, they
Yeah.
probably have the hots or something for both Wednesday and Xavier. Like they want to go to the Raven together. I don't know.
So somebody
But
would
it's
have had to
highly
known
possible.
Xavier's going to give, or somebody had to have known that Xavier's going to give that phone to her, then obtain the number for that phone, and then message her anonymously while she's getting driven away for, I don't know, summer break or whatever it is. Or but
Yeah.
yeah, be interested to see how that plays out because, like I say,
Yeah.
so far
So
all we know is all we know so far is Xavier's the one that only one that has a number, but
that's true.
presumably it's not him. But of course,
And it
surprises,
can't
right? So
be Tyler because Tyler is being hoisted away as
yeah,
well.
but
And the other part,
did he change into a Hyde
he
right when it ended?
did, but they didn't show what happened though.
Yeah.
Because he was like in a straitjacket and then he started changing, and that's the end. But like theorists online are speculating that it's the janitor that is like in every shot with Xavier and XYZ. He's just in the background. So they're trying to choose like a mob character, like someone that could potentially be stalking her, XYZ.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, that's weird. But it
Yeah.
like it's just weird.
I mean,
And I
Jansen can move in and out pretty easily, and no one suspects a thing, right?
yeah, exactly. Because
So,
then, if it was the janitor, he could go into Xavier's room because he's cleaning the rooms anyways
yeah.
and be all like, oh, what's
So yeah, it could be the janitor, or perhaps the janitor's working for one of these other players. So,
exactly?
interesting.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I am a firm believer there's someone else other than Marilyn. And it probably has to do with some other thing that Morticia and Gomez did.
Oh yeah, they've been naughty for sure.
Well, they
They've been
fornicated in the
naughty.
forest.
Right, they probably shouldn't have sent Menze to that school. Any other school but that school. That was a mistake. Clearly, that was
Yeah.
clearly not the right choice to make. Um, all right then. So before we end, then is there anything else you'd like to mention, bring up about Wednesday, or just anything in general for that matter, before we end the podcast?
I thought it was really strange that they have like an opera group with the sirens, but they have no other like person in the entire school playing an instrument other than Wednesday. She's the only one that played at the like town hall
Right.
community,
Yeah.
and she's the one playing the one instrument representing the entire school. It's kind of like no one
Yeah,
else has a talent, no one else has a hobby, like no
I'm
one
not sure
else.
if I noticed that, but yeah. Okay.
Like
Ah.
that just seems really, really weird. Like really, really weird. Again, they just wanted to highlight Wednesday. I get it. That's fine. I mean, they could have totally had them play like next to her or had like the sirens sing next to her and then like scramble and run away and then she could still be sitting there playing the cello, but no. And then all of the episode titles all had like a type of woe in it. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I think
Okay.
that was really clever. That needs to be like addressed a little bit more, but yeah, I
Well,
just think that there's a lot of things that
whoa, what a night and stuff like that. Yeah.
Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
That was a good episode. I think that one's really fun. But like the Edgar Allan Poe Day, like let's go do this and look like we're seemingly a normal high school. And I'm like, oh, that's sweet. Okay, that's cool. I still think like something has to happen with the town where like they completely rebel because they have that pilgrim place and they had like witch trials there and then XYZ. So I'm just like, it doesn't make sense for such a big spectrum of like, okay, here are all of these like super fictional style characters to go to this high school. and it's seemingly okay as long as you pay us this money and then you give us this money, like they're working in harmony. But now that the principal's gone, that balance is not there, so who's going to restore that, you know? So I'm just kind of like, oh, we already saw how the other students from the other school, was it the sheriff? Yeah, not the sheriff, but like the mayor's son.
Oh yeah,
got to
Lucas.
go to
Yeah.
and that was like such an interesting thing, how they were just profiling each other anyways, and they were like very synonymous, Enid and his son, and it was just kind of heartbreaking because I was like, oh yeah, I really want Enid to get with the stoner, the gargoyle. Okay, guys, not the Myon Kakimiyase, like not that.
But you might
But
be. You might be.
I mean, you never know.
He's
but
that. He's experimental age. I'm just saying. Like he might be.
well, he stoned himself inside the bathroom.
Yeah.
Well, that happened. Anyways, I was actually starting to root for them. I would not mind exploring like a normie, like supernatural like relationship in the next one, because they kind of tried to do that with Wednesday and it didn't really happen. So
Well, it might still do it with Lucas and Bianca because it looked like they were kind of getting a bit close.
Oh, that's right. Oh my god, I totally forgot that.
That
Oh my
could
god,
still happen.
I love that one. Oh my gosh, I hope that works out, because like I hope Bianca gets what she deserves in a good way, not like, oh, she gets what she deserves, bitch. Ha yeah, you cut her my face. First episode, it's not a spoiler. Anyway.
Yeah, spoilers are fine. We go with spoilers. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's a spoiler podcast at this point. Well, at any point, it's fine. I'm not bothered.
Right, but I'm really excited to see like where would they go with that, and if they're going to disappoint me on that kind of storytelling. Because I would say that they wrapped up a lot of loose ends. Because like Enid now is like a werewolf. Like Wednesday, like she liked a guy, but too bad he turned out to be like a serial killer kind of guy, homicidal maniac kind of guy, like Transformer dude. I mean, he did technically save her too.
What the yeah, because pushed her out the way of the thing that's falling, wasn't it?
No, that's Xavier.
Oh wait, okay. Well, why did Tyler save her then?
Tyler saved her when she was getting strangled against the tree from Psychic Kid.
Oh yeah. You could right. Yeah. Was it Rowan?
Oh
yeah.
But the problem with that part was like, did he do that to save her knowingly, or did he get controlled? So
I'm assuming somewhat knowingly, because Wednesday was apparently integral to Marilyn's plan because they needed her blood to raise Joseph Crackstone. So yeah, I'd have to assume that. But then I don't know. They don't specify that she needed to be alive when they needed her blood. I don't know. Could dead blood work? Or I can't remember if they specified it had to be live blood. But yeah, they needed her blood. So
well, they needed a direct ancestor.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It was just, I think it's just a little strange.
Oh, speaking of that, actually, real quick. So she's a direct ancestor of Goody Addams. Okay, cool. But Goody Addams was around at a time where, you know, if you're having children, you're going to be married. And if you're going to be married, you're not keeping your last name. So was Goody already married? Because she looked young. But then again,
she can't be married. Are you kidding me?
To be fair, they did marry young quite back then. I think it was like 18 something, wasn't it? So possibly she was married. Actually, I think I just answered my own question.
She could have done the heresy thing and had something out of wedlock.
But then would they keep the same name though? Because if they
she would keep the same name. But the thing about that is like it doesn't make sense, because Morticia married into that family, and it's Gomez's last name. So when Morticia's like, oh yeah, one of the Addams family is calling you, blah 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 blah, it's just like, that's when blah 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 messaged me. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. You're not a real Adam. You married into it.
Well, maybe this.
But at the same time,
psychic connects with marriage. Yeah.
I think it's really strange because Goody, like, she's the only sole survivor of that incident, right? So it's just like, I wouldn't put it past them if they were like, Romani gypsy style, where they're like you can marry your second cousin.
I mean, it's possible. I mean, this is. I can't know if they specified it yet, but I'm sure it's 18 something or other.
Oh yeah,
So yeah. So yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, they approached all kinds of madness back then, like 13-year-olds getting married and having kids, and that was just normal back then. So yeah, maybe that's what happened with Goody's family. She was already married by the time you see her in that thing. It's like
yeah.
already married, taking somebody's last name, and possibly had kids already.
Maybe I don't really know. That part was just kind of like random
Yeah.
to have like, oh yeah, I'm your spiritual ancestor, and it's just me. It's like, okay. I mean, my husband took my last name because he doesn't really like his last name, so he's like, I don't really care for it, but I think you like your family enough, and I like you, so yay,
Yeah.
yay!
Yeah. Yeah, like your last name's cooler than my last name, so yeah. I mean that makes sense to be honest with you. Like if you got a cooler last name, yeah, go with the one that sounds cooler. That just makes sense, you know.
I mean, it's also like not to get too personal, like he doesn't really enjoy some of his family side. Like there's things that he's just like not proud of that they've done, and he's like,
Hmm.
yeah, I'd rather not be associated with them. I'm like, that's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. No,
don't want to
I
be
get
with
that.
that name and carry on its legacy. That's okay.
Yeah. Chance to get out of it. Yeah, I get that. All right. Yes, I think that'd be a good place to start winding down. To start wrapping up. Celeste Orchid,
Freaking Tom. My bad.
you've been awesome. Thank you for coming through and chatting about Wednesday with me. And even though you still got the sleeves, I appreciate the Wednesday dress look, and the dance. That is awesome. Thank you.
We all try.
Um, yeah. Any suggestions of shows or movies or stuff you want us to talk about? Drop it in the comments and see what we can do with that. Check out Celeste Orchid. Am I pointing the right way? Yep, it says Orchid. Links in the description to the YouTubes and stuff where you can check her cosplays and awesome videos that she makes for cosplaying on a budget. And stay inspired, stay creative.
Yep, stay
Did I get it
inspired
right?
and be creative. I will see
Be
you
creative. Be
in another
creative.
video.
Yeah,
Bye.
exactly.
That's how I end my videos.
But
Not
yeah,
my
check
shorts. I don't
check
have
all
enough
this
time for
out.
that.
But yeah, that's gonna be it for now. So guys, until whenever, if ever, peace.